Well, I learned something today here on Locked On Bama. It's better to be the flipper than the flippy.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey again, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, I've had better days.
I just got out of Oppenheimer, so I've had sort of a long day. I loved it, but boy, that's a long movie. Yeah, the Perry Thompson thing that took a turn today. Not shocking, not even surprising, but this is I have to look it up, and I'm going to because I'm fascinated. I wonder who was the last Alabama commitment to flip to Auburn. Now, heck, for all I know, somebody's going to say, dummy, that happened just this past December. But I don't think so. I mean, who was the last one? It's been a while. But, hey, one thing we've always said.
Robert Woodyard, did you say him?
No, I didn't say him. Robert Woodyard, that is a great call. That's a great call.
Frankly,
totally different situation, by the way, because Robert Woodyard was never a top 30, prospect like Perry Thompson is ranked by the services. But yeah, good memory. He's a good player though, and I think some people think he's going to start this fall at Auburn, I believe.
And he was coming off a major knee injury, and I think yes, Auburn flipped him. I don't think Alabama was greatly depressed.
It did much different. We won't go into it, but yeah, much different situation. I mean, that was far different. Perry Thompson, and by the way, I mean, we're going to talk about this the whole show. And I think one thing Alabama fans need to know, it's July. Signing day is in December. There's a whole season to be played. We have no indication of BOL that Alabama's going to stop recruiting Perry Thompson. And he's already flipped once. He's been committed to Alabama for a long time. We'll see what happens, but it's all the more reason why adults, and they should never do this under any circumstance, but all the more reason why everybody should remain calm. The recruitment continues, right? And for anybody out there that's like, no, too mad they want to spout off, did Auburn stop recruiting Perry Thompson when he committed to Alabama? No, they didn't. So why should Alabama stop recruiting Perry Thompson now that he's committed to Auburn? I mean, signing day's in December. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, no. I'm right there with you. And look, I mean, we've talked about this before. We're going to lose some recruiting battles to Auburn now. And I mean, this is one. And frankly, if you're going to lose a recruit, I hate to lose Perry Thompson. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to get him back in the fold. But I guess if you're going to lose somebody and lose a wide receiver, so be it. But, I don't want to lose an offensive lineman. I don't want to lose Jalen Mbakwe. I don't want to lose Julian Sayin. And if you're telling me I got to lose somebody, I mean, he wouldn't be high on my list, but I mean, I can think of some guys that would go before him. And, I want him back in this fold simply from a perception standpoint. I think he may end up back in the fold. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying there is certainly a possibility. And, you have to remember this, that, Auburn has gone all out on this guy, and they went all out in this big cat thing. They got DeMarcus Riddick. They got Malcolm Simmons from right in my hometown in Alexander City, really good player. Alabama didn't pursue him. I think he's a good player. I understand why Alabama didn't, but I think Malcolm Simmons is good. I think he'll be good at Auburn. But it's one of those things where it's okay to say, hey, they just beat you out. And it's not there are a lot of people saying he didn't want to win and he's all about the money or he's all about this. I don't really know what the answer is in the end. I kind of get it. I mean, Hugh Freeze had some success with big receivers, and he's a bigger receiver. And, we got Jamie French and Ryan Williams coming down the track. And so, and I feel like they will certainly stay in this class.
And I think we ought to look at, for all those like, oh, well, Auburn, NIL and this and that. Well, I mean, Jalen Mbakwe has an Auburn offer. Casey Poe has an Auburn offer. Jeremiah Beeman has an Auburn offer. Caleb Odom has an Auburn offer. I mean, there's a lot of kids committed to Alabama that Auburn really wanted. And if you just do a list of, okay, who did Alabama and Auburn fight over? There's about 8 to 9 kids right now that both schools really put out the effort to sign. Alabama's about up 6-2, 7-2, somewhere in that range, with some decisions still upcoming. So, Perry Thompson and DeMarcus Riddick chose Auburn so far, and about 6 or 7 other kids have chosen Alabama. And ironically, I'm not bragging. This is more luck than anything, but we were quoted on the BOL message board today of something we said the other day or something back when, which is that we said Hugh Freeze is going to sign some kids that Alabama wants. The free pass of just walking over Auburn and getting 10 out of every 10 kids we want is over. Hugh Freeze is going to get 2 or 3 out of every 10. And that literally looks to be the number right now. I mean, it literally looks to be the number, and somebody pointed it out. So, I think listeners of the show, knew this was going to happen. Not Perry and DeMarcus Riddick specifically, but that maybe 2 or 3 out of every 10 right now is going to choose Hugh Freeze and Auburn when we battle them out. Hey, me and Luke can quote times when going 50-50 or 60-40 was a reality for Alabama recruiting against Auburn when they've had it going really good and had a high-quality coach that really understood recruiting like they did in the Pat Dye era, for instance.
Yeah, and one other thing, as far as I'm concerned, the one thing that bothers me, and this is such a nitpicky thing about the Saban era. We have prioritized the state less, and I get it because we've gone national and gotten some truly super dudes. I get that. And so I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying, I've been saying on this podcast, I've been saying well before we ever started this podcast, eventually that's going to catch up to us somewhat. Because if you look at who's committed to Auburn from this state, it's a bunch of good players. And now Perry Thompson and DeMarcus Riddick are a part of that group. Now, Amon Lane, Bryce Kane, I'm just rattling off some off the top of my head. The Phillips kid, the linebacker, who's pretty good.
Yeah, he's a good player.
So, and look, maybe Alabama didn't go after him. I get that. I understand. But
I don't think Alabama recruited Joseph Phillips very hard or Bryce Kane. They know who they are. And I'm sure it was a long evaluation. That continues. And again, it's July. And one thing I'm reminded of all the time, Luke, and I'm sure you'll remember, I mean, to get in the time machine and just go back 12 months ago, how many Alabama fans were resigned to the fact that Clay Russaw and James Smith would go to Auburn? I read about it every day, pretty much. I mean, and it didn't happen. And like what I just, have said, or what I'm saying today is, for anybody that's upset or worried or has anxiety over this or is mad over this, check back with us on signing day. Check back with us on signing day.
Yeah. And again,
Alabama's class versus Auburn's. Check the wide receiver class on signing day. December 20th, the signing day this year. Let's look December 20th at the receivers Alabama has signed versus Auburn and tell me which one you want to choose. Now, hey, I could be wrong. I'm projecting something that's 5-6 months off, but I still like Alabama's chances to sign a very good wide receiver group and one that looks pretty good stacked up against Auburn's.
And I'm right there with you. And that's the other thing that I guess is so frustrating. But it's all part of it, right? I mean, Auburn's been down for a long time. I mean, they didn't go to a bowl game last year. So, I mean, they've been down for a long time. They're looking for something to sink their teeth in. So they're enjoying this more. I talk about that all the time. Auburn has more fun in their up moments than we do. There'll be some people in the comments going, I love hoisting those trophies. I get it. I love it too. I'm not saying I want to be an Auburn fan. What I'm saying is in their up times, they have more fun because they're fewer and further between. It doesn't matter. But my point is that, yes, they're enjoying the heck out of this. I've seen a bunch of grown men on Facebook do the freeze emoji, and they're going, it's a heat wave, but, it sure is freezing down here. Okay. I mean, I got to let them have their fun, man. What are you going to do?
This is what they envisioned when they hired him. And we saw it coming, and he's a good recruiter. Nick Saban respects Hugh Freeze a great deal. This is what I've always said about Hugh. The reason I knew he'd have some level of success at Auburn is I think he correctly prioritizes recruiting. He knows it's about the dudes. And if that sounds like, hey, you dummy, they all do. Really, they don't. Really, they don't. A lot of coaches don't. And there's even some in the SEC that don't, in my opinion. But Hugh Freeze understands that, hey, I'm not going to out-chess move anybody on Saturdays. I'm going to win if my guys are more talented than your guys. So I'm going to put all of my efforts into making sure that my guys are better than your guys, because I'm not going to win chess matches on Saturday. No one's going to do that consistently. I think there's a guy in Oxford, I won't mention his name. He thinks he can win the chess match every Saturday, and he's really good at it. But guess what? How many wins does he have against the top 25 in his career? And I'm not talking about just at Oxford. I'm talking about other places he's been too. There's not as many big wins as people might think. And that's a guy who definitely wants to out chess play you on Saturdays and who doesn't exactly have signing days that look like Christmas.
And let me add one more thing. We're overdue for a break, but I do want to say this. As much as it pains me to say it, and it pains me more to say it than it does for you out there to listen to it, because I'm from Alexander City, Alabama. It is Auburn annexed. I mean, it just is. But think about the teams that have won a national championship in the last 20 years. I mean, Alabama, certainly a bunch of them, Clemson, a few of them, Georgia, a couple now, Ohio State, Florida State. Auburn's in there. Now, we can talk about they missed a bowl game last year. They did. We can talk about they lose every time they go to the Birmingham Bowl, it feels like, and they go there a bunch. That's true. And they, in 2017, they were set up to go to the playoffs. They ended up losing their last two games. All that's true. All that's true. They've also won a national championship and played for one in the last 15 years. And so what that means is they're more relevant than you want to give them credit for. And I'd include myself in that argument. And every now and again, I have to remind myself of that. Auburn wasn't going to be down as badly as they've been down. Yes, Nick Saban beat them into submission by some regard. But they were never going to be beat down completely, because even when they're down, then they focus all their efforts on trying to beat Alabama, which frustrates the heck out of us, because we're like, hey, we just need to get through this game to get the SEC title game. Aren't y'all supposed to lay down? Y'all suck. And they just won't do it for us. They never do it for us. All right. Let me tell everybody about LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Wonder if you freeze use LinkedIn Jobs for Perry Thompson. Maybe. All you got to do is go to LinkedIn Jobs, add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word you are hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and who you'd like to hire. It's why small businesses rank LinkedIn #1 in delivering quality hires versus their leading competitors. And I'm also going to put this overlay down here, which I neglected to do earlier, and I'm sorry, but there it is. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to and helps you find them faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions may, and I bet they do, apply. Jimmy, on the next Locked On Bama, we'll probably get back. We might have some more reaction from, we're about to get in the Champions Cookout. We might have more reaction from that because we're doing this on Saturday night. So a lot of the news isn't coming out, whatever news there is. And we'll also get back into your countdown, which is getting, really, really close to being done. But let's talk about the Champions Cookout right now. So a lot of big names there. That's in all the Perry Thompson hubbub and all the big cat stuff. I mean, again, I give Auburn a lot of credit. They stole the spotlight this weekend. They stole the recruiting spotlight this weekend. I'll give them props. But Alabama had a cookout with a bunch of dudes there. Serious major league dudes. And that needs to be appreciated. And is there any news that you know of that's come out of this thing?
Not specific news yet. Again, we're recording this on Saturday night. We'll see. But some people have to realize about recruiting is, Alabama typically recruits very highly ranked, highly regarded guys that have multiple big offers and are seriously considering other big-time offers from other big-time places, right? So typically what happens, and I'm using typically because it's recruiting, right? Give me a rule and then I'll show you 6 exceptions to it. typically a kid's not going to commit publicly at Alabama's Champions Cookout. It's happened, may happen this time, it's happened before, but typically that's not the case. Although what often happens at these type things is a kid may commit to Alabama and then it come out publicly later after the kid's had a chance, because he wants his moment, right? His big announcement. He doesn't just want to commit on the spot and tweet it out. I mean, that's fine if you don't have many offers, or if everybody just knows where you're going because it's your best offer by far. That's not the typical kid Alabama's recruiting. I'm going to talk about a couple of kids here, for instance, it would be good examples of, hey, they're not going to commit on Twitter while they're there. They want an announcement because they're big time dudes. One's George McIntyre, quarterback from Nashville, Brentwood Academy, number 2 quarterback nationally in the 25 class. This is very possibly a future 5-star type quarterback. Big deal. Also considering LSU strongly, considering Tennessee strongly, has offers from just about everybody in college football. He's a high priority guy for Alabama. And if he wants to commit, I mean, we've been saying this at BOL for a while. If George McIntyre wants to commit, Alabama's going to take that commitment. I mean, this is a big time kid, but he's also very unlikely to just publicly commit on Twitter in the middle of Champions Cookout. I think there would be a pretty big announcement, right? Amari Jefferson is on campus this week in Alabama. And hey, this is a great guy to talk about today because he's a wide receiver, just like Perry Thompson. As a matter of fact, I find him in some ways similar to Perry Thompson. We'll talk about that right now. But Amari is going to commit publicly next Saturday. Could he be committing Alabama privately this weekend, saying, hey, I'm going to announce it next weekend? Maybe. We don't know. We don't know for sure that he's going to pick Alabama. He's strongly considering Tennessee. We think of BOL, he's probably down to those two programs. Alabama and Tennessee. Was earlier committed to Tennessee to play baseball. He's going to be a 2-sport player. This is not, people don't get confused. Kool-Aid wanted to play 2 sports. Terrion Arnold wanted to play 2 sports. There's talk that Dylan Lonergan might play baseball. Make no bones about this. Amari Jefferson is a 2-sport guy. He's going to play baseball, period. And he's either going to do that at Alabama or Tennessee. He's going to play football and baseball, be on football scholarship. So football comes first. Joseph Hastings of BOL, great interview with Amari, where Amari made it clear, yeah, I'm committed to Tennessee baseball, but I am making a football decision. There's way too much talk I've seen on our message board at BOL and elsewhere on Twitter about that. Boy, I hope Rob Vaughn does this, and boy, what we need to be worried because Tennessee's baseball's been on a uptick for a while. No, Amari Jefferson made it very clear to Joseph Hastings, I'm going to make a football decision, and then I'm going to play baseball wherever I decide. So he's going to commit next Saturday to either probably Alabama or Tennessee. Georgia was in there. That shows how good this kid is. By the way, he's ranked by On3, the best of the recruiting services, right about 100 in the nation. He's roughly a top 100 guy. Anyone that watches his tape, and this is the thing about playing for a small private school, Luke, I don't know if you've watched the Amari Jefferson huddle yet. If you haven't, you need to watch it this week. It's a fun watch. Anyone that watches this huddle is going to think he's better than even number 100. He is a total dominating presence on tape, a big framed receiver that looks like Perry Thompson. That, man, he runs away from people on that tape. But just keep in mind, he plays at a place called the Baylor School in Chattanooga, a private school in an area that doesn't normally produce a ton of talent in Eastern Tennessee. So keep that in mind when you watch the tape. But, man, when you watch, no one's going to watch that tape and not want Amari Jefferson. And who wants him? Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee. We're talking about 3 programs that are going to all sign top 10 classes, in December. They all want Amari. So when you watch the tape, you'll want him too. And the bonus for Alabama or Tennessee would be you're getting one heck of a baseball prospect too. This kid has, from what I understand, I'm no baseball guy, but a big league, major league upside. He's a phenomenal baseball player.
All right, Jimmy, let's take a break. When we come back, we will talk a little bit off the wall expansion stuff because I ain't even gotten your thoughts on this. And we're back. Couple of things. First of all, when you said Amari Jefferson and ranked number 100, if I remember right, and I kind of cheated here, but I do remember Amari Cooper initially being rated like in the 90s to 100, like initially. And I know I just looked it up on Rivals. That's the only one I could find. He was number 45, which was higher than I remember. But I remember watching Amari Cooper's tape and thinking, show me 2 wide receivers better than this cat. And
right.
He was
and I think what happens, I'm not going to speak for Charles Power, who heads up the rankings department on 3, does a phenomenal job. But I'm just guessing here, all right? Amari plays at a small private school in East Tennessee. You've got to take that into account when you're doing the rankings. Now, On 3 has him higher than everybody else, and there's no doubt the competition he plays against might be a factor in where he's ranked. But Amari's ranked so high now, there's a very good chance he's going to be going to maybe one of these national all-star games, and they are custom built for a kid like him. If Amari goes to a national all-star game and shows competition, doesn't matter, it's the real deal, he could be a big riser late, like Luke is talking about with Coop, right? Who also was a national all-star guy who did move up in the rankings and was a big-time recruit, in part because he played in those tight games. Let's see where Amari is come December. And again, we have yet to adamantly predict at BOL that it's going to be Alabama, but it is looking very possible. And you get Amari Jefferson, you already got Rico Scott. Let's see what happens between now and signing day. I think Alabama will end up with one more highly regarded wide receiver. I'm going to predict that, not name any names, because I have nothing to report. Let's just call it. I'm completely relying on Nick Saban's history here, and I bet there'll be another big name before December on this 24 signing class.
Let's talk a little expansion here, because things are getting real. And I drove to Raleigh, North Carolina the other day. And so in driving, I listened to a lot of talk about this. Colorado's going back to the Big 12. I mean, Colorado essentially went to the Pac-12, got worse as a program. And they were like, you guys just aren't for us. We're going to go back over here. And we know they lost their 2 best programs since we've been gone. But we're going to go back there. Yeah, we'll see y'all later. And they're not done. I mean, they'll get Arizona, I think. They could get Arizona State and maybe, who knows? Utah?
Maybe Utah.
Yeah.
I think if they add Arizona and Arizona State, they might also be adding Utah.
Yeah, they're going to add an even number. There's no doubt. So, and then what's Oregon and Washington going to do? I mean, surely to God, they're like, hey, Big Ten, we're willing to talk deals here. And then what it does, and there's some people like Rick Neuheisel and probably some Pac-12 folks that are sad about this, but I mean, Oregon State and Washington State sound like they may, and Cal and Stanford may be put out to pasture. And frankly, I'm fine with it. They bring nothing to the table anymore. I mean, at one time, I know Drew Bledsoe was at Washington State and Mike Leach was there, and it was kind of fun. I know at one time, Stanford and Cal have this rivalry that everybody loved to talk about, and the band is out on the field, and Stanford had a pretty good they had a mini run, where they were pretty good. They were never really a national force, but they were pretty good. And they used to beat Oregon back when Oregon was a national force. Cal hadn't beat a drop in a while. And Oregon State, I mean, I guess Chad Ochocinco came out of there, and TJ Houshmandzadeh, I think they were there at the same time. Gary Payton, a long time ago in basketball. But really, I'd be fine. And then there's all the stuff happening in Northwestern. I mean, you've got to wonder if Northwestern's like, we like these checks and all, but y'all are screwing up our reputation by the minute. And you wonder if the Big Ten, I don't know. We're going to end up with 3 super conferences, it sounds like, somehow, some way. Florida State and Clemson are at least kicking the tires everywhere. If I'm the SEC, I would love to have them. I know in terms of footprint, it doesn't do anything for you. But if I'm the SEC, I'd love to have them. I mean, I am the SEC. I'd love to have them. So where do you think all this is going to end up? And is any of this related to the fact that, if you're going to have a conference and you're going to have an automatic qualifier? So I guess if you're the SEC, you're like, well, the best thing we can do is to have fewer automatic qualifiers is break up these other conferences, then yeah, you got to have an automatic qualifier from our conference. And if there are only 3 or 4 other conferences, 2 or 3 other conferences, then more of our people can get in as at-larges. That makes sense to me.
And I think you will see, down the road in terms of where this is going, the majority of at-larges will be from SEC and Big Ten schools. It's really the big, it used to be the Power Five and the Group of Five. We're definitely headed towards the Big Two and maybe the significant two, meaning the Big Two is SEC and the Big Ten, and the significant two, the Big 12 and the ACC, and then there's everybody else. They'll have a team or two in the 12-team playoff. In terms of where it's going, it's extremely difficult to decipher. I will say for the SEC though, you can call it footprint, you can call it whatever, but it all comes down to this: if Greg Sankey or somebody in the SEC wants to add a Florida State or Clemson, if that even happens, if it's possible to happen, because they have a very complicated grant of rights deal in terms of leaving the ACC. It may be legally impossible, but let's say that it is possible, and Florida State and Clemson want to join the SEC. What will happen is there's really just one question. It's not about TV markets or anything else. There's just one question. Every president, and it's a presidential decision. This doesn't come from a head coach or an AD. It's the presidents of the university. They will have one question. My check from the SEC right now each year is $49.5 million. Guarantee me that by adding Florida State and Clemson, it's more. I need to know that my share is more. So that's going to be the presentation, right? If you're adding it, it's going to be that. Money drives all of this. Too many fans look at, who's winning? Or, look at this TV market. Maybe that is a factor. Maybe the winning's a factor. Or they look at brands. Okay, all of these things are factors. But in the end, it comes down to that question. I'm not going to vote to add them in the league unless you show me that my share, the annual check I get from you, is bigger. If so, all right, let's do this.
No, I think you're right. It all comes down to money. It always does. And, I want to throw this out there that, I was thinking while we were talking about the Auburn Perry Thompson stuff, I know I've used this analogy before, that, I can't, every time, Alabama, we've won all these championships. We've had all these titles. We've got the number 1 draft pick. We got more people in the NFL than most NFL teams. We got everything going on. And I feel like the Grinch listening in during Whoville when I've already stolen all the presents and they're still dancing around the tree and singing. And I'm like, would y'all please stop singing for a minute? But you can't do it. I'll tell you, you can laugh about it all you want to. Auburn folks got spirit. I'll give them that, man. I will give them that. All right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow, probably with a lot of countdown stuff, maybe with some Champions Cookout stuff. So we will be back tomorrow with all that. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.